not crying anymore. Oh, because I praise the Lord. I've been laughing all day long because of my Lord. Depression doesn't faze me anymore. Anxiety is gone because of my Lord. It's time.
Hey everybody, welcome to Lost Light and Laughter, an uplifting show about laughter after tragedy. I'm your host, Michelle A. If you're ready for some inspiration and laughter in your life, you've tuned in to the right show.
It's time to show love, everybody. Show love one time. Feel me strong enough to fight my battles. I know he'll never give me more than I can handle. My Lord, my King, the one that I do love. He sends his
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Lost Light and Laughter. I'm your host, Michelle A. And today I have a special guest. His name is Paul Barboa. Paul, come on in. Tell
Hello.
the audience a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Hello, and again, thank you, Michelle. It's such a pleasure to be here today. As far as what I do, I call myself a grief doula, but basically I help people with their grief journey, whether it's the beginning, whether it's for weeks, whether it's for days, however long they need me. I'm their support. I'm their rock.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, well, Paul, as you know, the name of the show is called Lost Light and Laughter. Okay,
Yes,
talk to us about a significant loss in your life. And you have the freedom to share as much or as little as you like, but tell us about it.
I am happy to do so. I think in 1998, I had two very significant losses. Both of them occurring within a month. The first was the loss of my mother, who died of uterine cancer.
Yeah.
And then,
sucks.
oh yes, it does. And 1 month later was the loss of my 11-year-old daughter.
Oh man,
And
I'm so sorry.
yeah, it's you do your best to try to encompass, try to understand and envision that kind of loss. And even today, if I hear someone mention something similar to me, in all candor, I don't know what to say. I try to be as empathetic as possible, but you do what you can in that moment, of course. But that being said, so my daughter, she died of a congenital defect called moya. And in essence, the blood supply to her brain was malformed, and she outgrew her blood supply.
Oh, wow.
And she had strokes. Her organs shut down one after one, and we had to pull her life support. And she had just turned 11 years old. And perhaps one of the most painful decisions anyone should have to face for any family member, of course. But that's what we did. And my whole world came apart. As I said, I'm still feeling the grief of my mother. And she was a beautiful person, and like the mothers for all families, she was the oak. She was the oak tree that supports everyone and everything in that family. And so again, I'm still feeling the energy of that loss from my mother. And at that time, my daughter wasn't doing well. As I said, she had this congenital defect. It had slowly become more and more progressive, even after surgeries that were done to help her. And during those surgeries, she prospered, she grew, she blossomed, especially in school. But it could only do so much. And ultimately, as I said, as she grew, she had more strokes, more convulsions, and ultimately her little body just couldn't handle it anymore. And as I said, we had to make the terrible choice to pull her life support. They had kept her in a induced coma. So we did that, and of course, my life, it came apart, and I went into a very dark, ugly place. And I'm not ashamed to tell you, Miss Michelle, that there was a point where I was convinced I couldn't have cared less about anything or anyone.
Right.
And I was at a point where I was ready to commit suicide.
Mm-hmm.
I had reached a point in where I was looking out of a hotel room, and I thought to myself, as I looked out that window,
Mm-hmm.
this is the last sunset I'm ever going to see. And I was just fine with that. And I turned on the TV, and I'm channel checking. And for all the attention that I'm paying to this TV, it was more like the TV was watching me.
Wow.
I was just going through the motions.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, when you're watching TV and you step away and a commercial comes on, you know how loud commercials can be, right?
Right.
They know that you're getting up to leave, and because you're going to get some Doritos and you're going to get another Coke, and
Right. Something
so
to
they
drink,
need
yeah.
to get you.
Uh-huh.
And that's just it. That's just it. At that moment, I heard God's message. I heard God's message, and it sounds laughable to some people, but it was through a commercial.
Wow.
As I said, I'm moving through the commercials, and I hear, stop, pay attention to these prices, because they're never going to be the same again.
Wow. So
And
God,
I move on. I move on, Miss Michelle. I move on to other channels, flicking this remote, and I hear, listen, this is great music from the 70s that we're offering here tonight. And I'm flipping some more, Miss Michelle. And I'm not necessarily the sharpest tool in the shed, but this was obvious to me. This was blatantly obvious. And I moved on again. I moved on to the channels again. And I hear one more time, please listen. You don't have to do this.
Wow.
And I stopped. And I wavered. And through tears rolling down my eyes, I checked the channels again. And I heard the final message that I needed to hear that night. Suicide Prevention Hotline.
Wow.
And I called that number. I literally am clawing with a pen and a writing tablet, and I'm scrawling this phone number before the commercial goes away. And I immediately turn off that TV, and I call that number. And there's this woman answers, and she has a very soft, angelic voice, very calming. And I tell her, look, you need to understand, first and foremost, I've already decided I'm not going to commit suicide tonight, but I need you. And she asks me, what are you going to do? What were you going to do? Tell me your name. And I tell her, my name is Paul. And I was going to take pills. I was going to take an overdose of sleeping pills and just kill myself because I can't stand this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But I saw your commercial, and I know this isn't the right thing for me to do. And she said, thank you for calling, Paul. I'm so happy you did. And I'm going to ask you, Paul, to please make a contract with me right now. I want you to call someone that you love, someone who's important, if at all possible, and let them know that you're going to be all right. And I said, yes, ma'am, I'll do that. And she said, Paul, when you want to, you call me again, and you let me know what you've done. You let me know that you made that phone call. And I said, yes, ma'am, I will. So it's 2:00 in the morning, Miss Michelle. And I call my one of my older brothers, and I tell him what I was about to do and how I changed my mind. And he says, Paul, I wouldn't have blamed you. I wouldn't have blamed you at all, but I'm glad you didn't.
Yeah.
And he says, it's time for you to come home. It's time for you to come home. Let me take care of you.
Yeah.
And I was in that position to be able to do so. I had sold my home. I had left my job. And as I said, Miss Michelle, I couldn't have cared less.
Right.
So
right.
I was in the position to go home. And I was in the position where I was loved and cared for, and I had a support system with my family.
Mm-hmm.
And my sister-in-law says, you need to go to a grief support group. And there's one available here in the area hospice. And it was a walkthrough meeting. You can come and go as you please, open door system. Mm-hmm. And I went there and I cried like being in the presence of God in church. You know that warmth, and you know that caring, that love that just permeates you in church, and it's tangible, like a blanket wrapped around you tight. You feel God's love and presence in church. Yeah. And I felt a similar presence in that hospice, in that meeting. Yeah. I was with people who understood what I was feeling, what I was going through. And in the process of that, Miss Michelle, I grew and I recognized that this wasn't just me. This was many people, and we are all feeling this pain. And no matter what your nationality, no matter what your creed or religion, everybody needs love. Everyone feels pain, and they need support. Yeah. And it was because of that I decided to go back to school. Mm-hmm. And I got my master's in grief support. And I decided, this vessel is still empty, and it's still learning how to grow. I'm still learning how to be a better human being, but I've been there, and I'm going to help people from now on for the rest of my life who are going through where I've been. And I'm going to be in the trenches with them. And that's been my calling ever since. And that's what made me decide to form the Facebook group, One Heart, Many Hands. It's inspired by the philosophy, the Ubuntu philosophy, where we get the phrase, it takes a village to raise a child. Yeah. And it takes a whole community to help one person who's in pain. Yeah. It's something we should do because it's the decent thing to do.
That's right.
And it's what helped me decide to go create a blog on YouTube and create my page, No More Walls to Paint. Because again, I'm still growing. I still need to record this journey. And hopefully this maybe it's going to be helpful to someone else.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm just like, it's just, I feel it in my spirit. Just it's one thing after the next. And I can't imagine double losses like that. And I just pray that no one has to experience that in life. But exactly. I know this is a hard world, hard world. And, you talked about the light and how God showed up off of a commercial break and how you were able to recognize his voice. And I just want to touch on that because a lot of times people may assume that God will show up in this, super spiritual way, right?
That's right.
But God is so merciful and he's so loving and so compassionate that he finds a way to reach you where you're at. And he will use a commercial break, right?
Right, that's right.
Just to speak life into you, to tell you to stop, listen, you don't have to do this. And then he turns around and he sends people into your life that say, I got you. It's okay.
Yes, ma'am.
It's okay. I don't understand what you're going through. It's a hard hit for anyone, but I'm going to do whatever I can to just be there for you.
Ma'am.
And listeners, I want you to know that God will do the same thing for you. He did it for Paul. He will do it for you. And sometimes, we're looking for him to find us in these unique ways. But God, sometimes it's the smallest thing that he's trying to just tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, I'm here. I was here when you lost your mom, and that was hard. Yes. And I was here when you had to make that decision. It's the hardest decision you're ever going to have to make.
Ma'am.
And I was here when you did that. And I'm going to be here the next day and the day after that. And I'll be here every single day. And so that's why I created a show like this, because people are experiencing significant loss. And it's hard when you're trying to talk to your friends and they don't understand.
Right.
You're trying to talk to your family and they don't get it. And so I wanted to provide an opportunity for people to hear how people went through and how they got through tragic losses, back-to-back losses. And so I know we talked about the loss. We talked about the light and where God was. But can you talk to us? Because I don't even know how it's even possible. What was the turning point for you? When did the laughter come in? Because like, how long did it take for you to realize, oh my goodness, I'm laughing again, or I have a smile on my face, like I can make it another day? When did you realize that was happening for you?
You know, Miss Michelle, it's funny. I had the small epiphany, and you mentioned how God can speak quietly and in whispers to you. And I was looking at a photograph of my daughter, and one of the things that she had a very funny gift was she could diffuse a situation immediately.
I love that.
Especially when she was in trouble.
I bet. Let's change the subject. Okay.
Yes, immediately. And she knew, and her mom would say, "Oh, you're going to get it, girl." And she would see me coming. My daughter would see me coming, and she'd go, "Oh, here come the big guns." How could you possibly be mad?
Right. She knows how to win you over.
She
like, come on.
did that. She knew it. Played me like a harp.
Hey, whatever works, man. I'm trying to get out of this trouble.
That's it. And so in answer to your question, I can tell you what, I had that moment and I smiled and I laughed out loud looking at this picture. And I remembered it. I remembered this, that it was okay to smile. It was okay to laugh. And that's when I had the little epiphany myself. Moving on doesn't mean you have to let go.
Right. You hold on to those memories.
And I was happy with that.
Yeah.
I felt comfortable. It didn't mean I loved her any less.
That's right.
But I was ready to move forward. I was ready to move on with my life. Yeah. So yes, ma'am.
Yes. Awesome. That's a beautiful testimony right there. She was just like, I'm going to show you how to diffuse this whole situation right here. Like,
every time
you're hurting right now, you're crying, but I got something for you, Dad.
Yes, ma'am. That's right.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. That is so wonderful. All right. So Paul, tell us if I know you do the grief counseling. Talk to us. Give us any some advice, any tidbits for someone that's going through grief right now, where they can reach you, anything that you can do to just encourage them to stay the course. All right. And then before we leave, we'll definitely put the suicide prevention line on there because I know they have a text number as well too now. So yes, give us some advice.
I'll tell you what. One of the things that we do in our Facebook group, again, the One Heart, Many Hands, is my little mantra is we're in the trenches with you. And there are some people who have trepidation about speaking to a professional counselor. And believe me, I would wholeheartedly encourage anyone who needs the help from a mental health professional to do so.
Right.
But you can't always do that 24/7. Mm-hmm. You can't always pay for those kind of resources 24/7. Right. But if you can be among people who can help you, who can support you and be with you, that has been the benefit of the group. And that's what I would encourage people to do. But the more important thing, the takeaway message would be, you are not alone. You never were. We will always be with you.
Amen. That is awesome. Okay, one last thing. Tell our audience the suicide prevention line. I know that they do have a new helpline number, which is easy. I know we have 911 for emergencies, but for suicide, it's 988. Okay,
that's
988, and you can reach someone the same way if you use their full phone number. 988 is the new line to if you're thinking about suicide. If you know someone, make sure that they have that. Lock it into your phone, 988. Paul, I want to thank you so much for coming on and being so transparent, sharing your story with us, and then just blessing us with just the advice that, life goes on, and we can hold on to those memories and we can still laugh and have joy all at the same time. It's not one or the other. So once again, thank you so much for coming on. This concludes this episode of Lost, Light, and Laughter. I'm your host, Michelle A., and I want you to continue to just keep smiling, keep living, and keep laughing.
Everybody, show love one time. It's time to give praise. Everybody, give praise one time. Yeah, it's time to show love. Everybody, show love one time.